King Arthur's Knights, Chapter 8, Part 3. Sir Owen thought he had never seen so beautiful a lady, or one so gentle and kind of mien. Deeply he sorrowed because he had caused the death of her lord, inasmuch as it had given her such grief. Her hair, yellow and long and curled, hung dishevelled about her shoulders, and her dress of rich yellow satin was torn, and across it was a wide sash of black velvet. And it was a marvel that she could see how to walk, for the tears filled her eyes. Sir Owen could not take his gaze from her, and love and pity for her filled his mind. When the procession had passed out of the town, the maiden, Elined, came into the room, and Sir Owen asked her eagerly who was the lady he had seen. "Heaven is my witness," replied Elined, "but she is the fairest and the sweetest and the most noble of women. She is my beloved mistress, and her name is Carol, and she is the Countess of the Fountain, the widow of him thou didst slay yesterday." "I sorrow for that," said Owen, "and I have seen her grief. But verily she is the woman that I love best. And if my hand hath wounded her grievously, my arm would more willingly protect her." "Indeed, thou art brave and bold, Sir Knight," said the maiden, "and much may you win if you are as faithful in your service and devotion to her as you have been in the service of your king, the great Arthur." And when it had passed midday, Elined said to Sir Owen, "You must keep this chamber while I go and woo for thee. Stir not out into the city, lest ill befall thee." Elined went to the castle and found all was in confusion, with mourning and lamentation. Her mistress she found sitting listlessly looking from the window, with pale sorrow on her face, and to Elined's greeting she would respond not. "It astounds me," said Elined at length, "to find you giving yourself up to unavailing sorrow in this way." "It astounds me also," said the Countess reproachfully, "that in my time of trouble and affliction, you, whom I have enriched and favored beyond all my handmaidens, should desert me. If I did not love thee, I should order thee to be executed." "It is for thy advantage that I was absent," said Elined. "I reproached not thy grief when thy lord lay dying, but now you have yourself to think of. Yet you seem more willing to live with the dead than to take heed of what may happen to yourself in a few hours. I would have thee remember that a live dog is better than a dead lion." "Hence from my sight, unfeeling girl," cried the Countess in anger. "There is no one in the world to compare with my dead lord in beauty, in strength, and in prowess. Get thee gone." Without a word, Elined turned and went from the room. She had not gone far before she heard the Countess coughing behind her, and on looking back, her mistress beckoned to her. "You are indeed hard-hearted, Elined," said she, "to think to leave me in my grief and in my need of good counsel. I will overlook thy cruelty if, as you say, you have been absent for my advantage. What mean you by that?" "This is my meaning," said Elined. "Thou knowest that without a man of knightly prowess and bravery, thou canst not hope to guard the fountain and keep these wide dominions in the power of thyself. Thou art the prey and booty of any bold bandit lord that chooses to make war upon thee and to capture and wed thee. And dost thou forget the wiles and treachery of thy old lover whom thou hast flouted, Sir Dewin of Castle Cower? Hath he not sworn to take thee and thy kingdom sooner or later, by fair means or by foul? Therefore it behooves thee at once to find a noble and generous knight, courtly and worshipful, who will guard thee and love thee, and hold down the turbulent lords, thy vassals and thy neighbors." "Hard will such a task be," sighed the Countess, "for the Earl Cadeau was a man among men. Yet I will wager to find thee such another, even excelling him in knightly prowess, in beauty of person, and for love and devotion to thee more than his equal, replied Elined, who remembered that the dead earl had not been over-tender to his gentle countess on many occasions. And where couldst thou find this paragon? Said the countess, flushing a little at the reminder of her late lord's neglect. At the court of King Arthur, replied Elined, for there are to be found the peerless knights of the world, men of their knightly words, and devoted to love and war. If it be that I must think of wedding again so soon, sighed the countess, go then to King Arthur and find me such a knight. But let him be gentle as well as brave, with fine and courtly manners, a man indeed whom I can really love. Elined went and kissed the flushing cheek of her mistress. Trust me for that, she said gently. I would do that as much for myself as for thee, my dear Carol. For did it not often go to my heart to see thee pine for gentle speech and affection, and sorrow at the harsh words thou didst suffer? I will set forth at once to Carleon, and him that I bring shall be worthy of thee. And all others that may come and woo thee, do thou keep at arm's length until I return. Elined departed from the castle, but she did not go beyond the town. It was in her mind to lie hidden for as long a time as it would take her to go to Carleon and return therefrom. Meanwhile, going about disguised, she would be able to see what the many lords were doing, who would essay to woo the countess, seeing that, lovely and rich as she was, she would be a splendid prize. And things happened as she had foreseen. Every day there came into the town one cavalcade or another, with some baron or earl in flashing armor at the head of his vassals, come to try his fortune and to win the lovely Countess of the Fountain, and to possess her wide dominions. Daily the Countess was compelled to receive fresh comers in audience, and while with deft excuses she kept each at arm's length, they crowded her audience chamber, proud and insolent, humble or crafty, eyeing each other with high looks, each prepared to slay his rival if the need arose. At last there came an earl who, as he came up the street at the head of a large company of knights, seemed to shine like the sun, for his armor was all of gold, and jewels were about his neck and on his girdle and his wrists. Every toss of his destriera's head dazzled the eyes with the fountain of flashing lights given off by the jewels which adorned the cloth of gold about his head. This knight called himself the Earl of Druid, but Elined was in the crowd of gaping townspeople that saw him enter, and she knew him for the old insolent lover of her mistress, whom the Countess had ever despised, Sir Dewin of Castle Cower. Sir Dewin disguised himself so that the Countess did not know him. She received him in audience, and though she was startled by the magnificence of his dress and a little moved by the gentleness of his manner, she felt that she feared and distrusted him. The next day he craved to see her again, and then said, Fair and noble lady, so deeply doth thy beauty move me, that I am eager to put to the test swiftly the question whether I, or some other happy knight among these noble gentlemen, shall obtain thy hand. Therefore I crave permission of thee to proclaim a joust between all these knights that sue for thee, and the winner among them all shall be he that thou shalt wed. Sir, said the Countess with great dignity, it is not for thee to order here, but for me. I wish nothing to be done for the space of 9 days, and then I will make my choice. At which Sir Dewin, though full of rage, must needs seem content. And the Countess hoped that, in the space she had named, Elined would have returned with the knight of her choice, and she herself could choose him for her lord, if she thought he was the man whom she could most trust and love. But Sir Dewin wrought upon many of the suitors who were of his mind, and they resolved that, will she, nill she, the Countess must needs abide by a contest between all her wooers to be holden on the 10th day. And on the 10th day all the knights, barons, and earls met together in full armor in a broad green jousting place beneath the windows of the countess. And having made the rules of contest and committed them to the seneschal of the countess, they prepared to prove which among them all was the knight of most prowess. Then there was fierce hurtling to and fro of knight against knight, and lances splintered, horses reared, knights fell wounded or dead, and were dragged away. And for long, among the 99 knights that there jousted, none of the crowds who looked on could see which were they who were gaining the day. From her window the countess watched with a sorrowing and dreading heart, for Elined had not yet returned, and therefore the countess must be the prize of one of these suitors who had pestered her, and none of whom she cared for. Then when the dust of the jousting and a little cleared, and the knights had withdrawn to the sides of the lists to breathe and rest a while, it was seen that 12 remained of the 99. The countess, looking from her window, knew them all from the devices on their shields, and none of them were men she favored. Some she knew were evil men, yet, as knights, were powerful in jousting. And she dreaded which of them should be the victor, to be her lord and master. Then the knights hurled together again, and as one after the other was unhorsed by stronger opponents and went from the field, she went pale with fear and anxiety. At last there were but two, and these were Sir Dewin, whom she knew as the Earl of Drood, and the other was a knight in blue armor, with a shield on which was painted a hillock or mound. And she knew him to be a man named Sir Daunt, or the Knight of the Mount, a man of fierce temper, quarrelsome, and cruel. The countess could have swooned with terror, for she knew that now she was doomed to an unhappy life, whichever of these knights prevailed. For though the Earl of Drood was soft and gentle in speech and manner, she feared that this but covered a wicked heart. She could hardly bear to look as she heard these two, the last of all the 99, crash together in the midst of the jousting ground. And she heard the cries of the onlookers. "The Blue Knight's the better man! How he heaves with his sword! Ah, the Golden Knight is down!" And looking from her window, the countess saw the Earl was lying wounded, and the Knight of the Mount stood over him. Then the Earl surrendered and was carried off the field. The great shouts that saluted the victor made the countess turn faint and sick with dread, so that she fell back among her handmaidens in a swoon. But quickly recovering, she stood up, resolved to meet her fate with proud dignity. In a few moments the door opened, and the arras was pushed aside, and the groom of the chambers announced with a shout, "The Knight of the Mound, victorious in the joust, craves leave to greet our lady the countess." The lady bowed assent, trembling in every limb. Then the groom stepped aside, and into the chamber came a comely gentleman, clad in purple tunic, rich with chains and jeweled belt. But it was not the knight whom the countess had expected, but a stranger with a courtly and gentle manner and a winning smile. And we'll pause here, and we'll continue with this story in the next video. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment below. Thanks so much for watching. I love you guys. As Tigger says, ta-ta for now.